Ladies and gentlemen, a very quick video here today, ignoring the advertisements, pushing them to the end of the video as not to distract you from what's happening here because we need to get it out, right? This information is hot off the press. We have just seen CPI come in, okay? So that's the inflation data from the United States. We saw CPI come in at 3.5%. It was expected at 3.4%, so it was slightly higher than where we were expecting it or where the market was expecting it. And of course, we've seen a bearish reaction because of that. This bearish reaction has not been a surprise at all. We made a video yesterday very clearly suggesting that this downwards trend was going to occur, or not downwards trend, but this downward swing was going to occur. That video was made at around 71.7K, I believe. And we've dropped downwards around 4,000 USD from that price region there. So excellent prediction there yesterday. The day before that, we made a bullish prediction. We moved upwards about 5% from that bullish prediction. So the last 2 days have been very clean on this YouTube channel. Let's try to keep that up, right? So I'm going to make a very clear prediction here at the start of the video, not waste your time. I think the Bitcoin will swing downwards to the bottom of this wedge. I think that's the first major target we need to reach. We are not yet at the bottom of the wedge, seeing as we are in an ascending wedge formation. The logical thing to do in an ascending wedge formation after rejecting from the top is to go to the bottom, especially considering that the mid wedge support line at 69K, right? This red line here, which by the way is the weekly charts all-time high from 2021. That was reflected as a weekly chart resistance level in March this year and also a support level just last week. That 69K level, which we were holding before CPI, the market was holding onto that level before CPI, waiting for the result, has been lost now. Therefore, we have no more support between that 69K level and the bottom of the wedge. I think the Bitcoin, is pretty much in a free fall to the bottom of the wedge at least, which would be at around 66.5 to 67K. So not much further down, just a couple more percent, 3 more percent down on Bitcoin. What we'll actually notice as well, and perhaps you haven't seen this before, is that if we bring up the 12-hourly chart RSI, we can see that the 12-hourly chart RSI is a very good representation of the price wedge we have on the screen. They're kind of working synonymously. They're working together right now. So we look at this RSI triangle formation, a very important formation that I could discuss realistically for 10 minutes by itself, but I won't do that. I'll save you. What we have here is a formation that we have 3 retests to the downside, okay, and 3 retests to the upside, making it a very valid triangle formation that is ultimately going to tell us where Bitcoin is going to go next, quite simply, right? If we break this wedge to the upside, Bitcoin's going up, right? We break it to the downside, Bitcoin's going down. And when I say going up, I mean it's going to new all-time highs. When I say going down, I mean it's going to 60K, right? It's a very major triangle formation on the RSI. It's been forming since January. This is big stuff here. What we notice is that on the support retest in April 2nd that led to a drive to the upside, we test this RSI 12-hour chart RSI right here. That led to the bounce. The rejection we saw just the other day led to the drop. Okay, so this RSI triangle is predicting the price action just as well as the price chart, if not better and more cleaner, right? So what I'm seeing right now is I see Bitcoin in the middle of a wedge heading downwards and not quite testing the support level yet. And I see the exact same thing reflected on the 12-hourly chart RSI. And the logical thing to suggest after seeing that is that both of these charts will retest their supports. So I assume that Bitcoin will come down and retest the bottom of the wedge right here. And I assume that the 12-hourly chart RSI triangle will come back down and retest the support right there. And I think those will happen at the exact same time. In fact, I'd be surprised if they didn't. So what I'm saying to you is this: Bitcoin will most likely go downwards a little bit further, test the bottom of the wedge, and then from there, we'll have to see. I can't make any further predictions from that. We'll have to see how it goes because, and I'll tell you why, because if we zoom out on Bitcoin, we look at the macro trend, we look at the fact that for the last entire year, essentially, there has been basically 0 significant corrections, right? Obviously, there's been like a correction here that was short-lived in February last year and a very, very brief correction for like 2 weeks here in January this year. Other than that, there's been nothing, right? Bearish price action just quite simply hasn't really existed really at all, right? We haven't really broken many macro support zones. Bitcoin is very clearly on a macro bullish bias right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, we've got an ascending wedge, that means we're going to go to 50K. That's just a ridiculously stupid thing to say with the data we have currently. All I can say is what we are doing within the wedge. I think it is likely, given the data we have now, that within this wedge, we will move to the bottom of the wedge properly. And then from there, we need to reassess the situation. I do see a likely possibility, okay? It's certainly on the table that Bitcoin comes down to the bottom of the wedge on the price chart and on the RSI. It sees a very good reaction and then it swoops to the upside and breaks all-time highs. That is not a scenario that's completely off the table at all. There's no guarantee of macro bearish price. There's no guarantee of a medium-term Bitcoin correction that extends for months here. Not at all. Given what Bitcoin's done in the last year, it is highly plausible that we just swing from the bottom of this wedge and the bottom of the triangle to the upside. Okay? Now, let me just not confuse you. I'm not making any predictions in that regard yet. I want to see what happens when we retest the bottom of the wedge and the price triangle. I will wait until that happens to make any concrete predictions because we need the real-time data. But right now, I think it's just objectively true. If you agree that this is a wedge and you agree that this is a triangle, which is impossible to not agree with, this is a triangle and this is a wedge, then you should agree with the fact that we should be going down to the bottom of the wedge and the bottom of a triangle at the very least, which is not it's not controversial at all. If it doesn't happen, that's just luck, in my opinion. Moving forward. Okay, so we've assessed that short-term trend, we've assessed the wedge, we've assessed the triangle, we've assessed the majorness of them. We also need to look into one more thing. This triangle, of course, is huge, and it's very indicative of price action on Bitcoin. It is coming to an apex, meaning there will be nowhere else for the RSI line to go around the end of this month, meaning by the end of this month, Bitcoin will have made a decisive move either out this range to the downside or out this range to the upside. So this range that we're in right now on Bitcoin, this sideways price action we've seen for the last month, will be coming to an end by the end of this month. So if you're bored or you're just sick of it, guess what? It's coming to an end soon. You won't need to stress about that any further. This is a range that is nearing its end. We have been ranging in this range for more time than we have left to range in this range. That is for sure. So this range is coming to an end. And it's just about which way it will come to an end, right? That's basically it. Moving on to macro, what we can look at is weekly chart. Weekly chart, obviously, the important level on the weekly chart is 69K. 69K was the 2021 all-time high. If we zoom in, it was also a level that we rejected from on the weekly candle close. Quite briefly, we got back above it. We're currently hovering below it, which is a little bit concerning, because we don't want to be losing that level, okay? Because what we have right now is a level that was rejected from, was gotten above, and if we drop back below it, that would mean this was a fake out, and that would lead to a more extensive correction. So we really want to be seeing the weekly candle closes remain above 69K. That is a necessity for Bitcoin, and the only way we're going to do that is if we don't break below this wedge. So this wedge actually is quite an existential threat for Bitcoin, because if we break down from it, we will see a medium-term correction for sure. And another thing on the weekly chart that's very interesting to look at, and in my opinion, perhaps the biggest threat or the biggest concern, the biggest thing to look at, my eyes are kind of watching this very closely on a daily basis here, is the weekly RSI ascending wedge formation, which we are currently sitting right on support for, okay? If the weekly candle closes low, right? So if the price breaks down from this wedge and we close the weekly candle low, this ascending wedge formation on the weekly chart will break downwards, and that will lead to a more extensive medium-term correction that could last up to 2 months, potentially, okay? That's when we start thinking, this is dangerous. Maybe we start thinking of de-risking at that point. Not necessarily, but, it depends how far we go downwards at that point. That could lead to a situation in which we de-risk. Let me put it that way. But right now, of course, the macro is still intact. There's no macro threats, really. I've said in the past, by the way, and I will say it again just to clarify, because I think I might have confused people with that comment I just made. In all honesty, Bitcoin is in a pretty decent macro position so long as it's above like 49K or 53K, right? 53K very clearly, and 49K are very clear necklines, right? So I just draw them out with this blue line here. They're very clear necklines between the bull market level and the bear market level. As long as we're above those regions, like the macro is not looking terrible at all. So let's not get ahead of ourselves with these random bearish comments here, right? The macro is still very, very, very intact and in a very good position. We're talking about medium-term corrections. We're talking about corrections that could drag us down for like a month, 2 months, and could really destroy our portfolios in the meantime. But of course, as I said, none of these corrections have been predicted in this video. I haven't predicted a medium-term correction. I don't necessarily predict a medium-term correction at this point. What I'm looking at this point is indicators that will give me the ability to react if it does occur. So for example, this wedge formation right now on the screen in the short term is a very important wedge, because if we drop below it, it becomes very likely that we see a bearish weekly candle close. And if we see a bearish weekly candle close, we will be dropping below this weekly candle ascending wedge formation, which will lead to a more extensive correction. That's why this wedge is important. This wedge isn't important because it's an important wedge. It's important because the effects of us dropping below this wedge will lead to more detrimental indicators like a breakdown from a very important wedge on the weekly chart RSI that's been stemming for like 8 months, okay? So there's a very important, everything in the charts is nuanced, as you know. Nothing's just straightforward, right? It's not like, oh, it's an ascending wedge, it's the end of the world, we're going to go down 40%. That's never the case. It's what happens if you do break from that wedge. You know, what will happen on the other charts that could lead to something more. It's a snowball effect, right? So what I'm looking at right now, just to clarify, and end off the video very strong with a very clear and concise point, is this wedge. I expect Bitcoin to come downwards and retest the bottom of the wedge. From there, I'll have to see how it goes, okay? I expect a retest of the bottom of the wedge. I expect a retest of the bottom of this 12-hour triangle. From there, we'll have to see how it goes. What I do know is that this triangle on the 12-hourly chart RSI is a very good indicator for Bitcoin's next macro move. If we break this triangle on the 12-hourly chart RSI to the downside, very good indicator for more bearish price action. Exact same thing can be said about the upside. So yeah, it's a very interesting week here for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's in a very intense position. It's at a crossroads. Do we see a more extensive medium-term correction, or do we see a swing to the upside in all-time highs and the start of an altcoin season? That's really what Bitcoin is facing, or start of an altcoin season soon, right? That's really what Bitcoin is up against here this week. So huge week. We need to watch it very closely. CPI has, of course, led to a continuation of a short-term downwards move. And the support is near now. We're getting to that level, which is 66.5k to 67k, which is a support zone that we could find a base from and potentially spring from, but we'll have to wait and see. Guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Sorry for kind of rambling on. I think I probably could have made this video a little bit shorter. I tried my best, but sometimes I just, my voice box gets ahead of my brain. Moving forward, right? BingX Exchange, BitGet Exchange, the exchanges on this YouTube channel. Referral links are down below for 15% trading fee discounts. You can check them out. It's the best way to help the channel, and it's the best way to help yourself because you're paying thousands of dollars to exchanges in fees. So you want a good exchange that is reliable, trustworthy, and cheap. My referral links are down below. Check them out. Crypto Academy, bull market sale. Obviously, if you're going to take this market seriously, you need to know what you're doing in the charts. You can learn it here in the Crypto Academy's Become a Trader course. It teaches you how to trade, trading education, market psychology, the whole 9 yards. Bull market sale for a limited time. Check it out. Now's the time to do that. And then finally, the VIP group on Telegram. We trade altcoins 4 to 5 times a week. So 4 to 5 trading signals a week with a 77% win rate. Fully transparent track record in a PDF. Not many people do that, guys. Not many people share their trading results. I'm confident in my results. I share them publicly. You can go in there and you can analyze them. Check out the VIP group if you want to trade altcoins with me. Guys, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you tomorrow.